10 weeks ago, I introduced you to a framework. 4 letters, 4 steps. YUSR. Yield, understand, seek, regulate. Since then, we've gone through each step in depth. What it means, what the nervous system science says, how to practice it in the body. And then we took that framework and applied it to three most significant transitions a woman can go through: divorce and heartbreak, expat life and relocation, trying to conceive, pregnancy, and matrescence. If you've been here for all of it, thank you, genuinely. Today, I want to do something I haven't done yet. I want to show you the entire method all at once, and then I want to tell you something about the word USR itself because I think it needs to be known. I want to take a moment to acknowledge what the last 10 weeks have actually been. We started with yield, and I told you it was the hardest step because it asks you to stop fighting your own experience. Many of you must have felt that this was the first time anybody had framed turning towards difficulty as strength rather than weakness. We move to understand, naming precisely what's actually happening in the body. And so many of you found language to the things you felt for years and never had words for. Then we moved to seek, the step that asks you to become the expert of your own nervous system, to reach towards support rather than carrying everything alone. And finally, we arrived to regulate, not as calm, not as a destination, but as the capacity to return again and again. And then we took all of that and we walked through three challenging transitions a woman goes through, not as abstract science, but as lived experience met with a method. What I want to do today is show you the pattern underneath all of it and then show you where it came from. Every difficult experience, every activation, every wave of grief, every moment of overwhelm follows a similar response in the nervous system. Something happens, the body responds, and then either the response gets amplified with resistance or it gets met with presence. Yield is the map for choosing presence. 4 moves in sequence that takes you from wherever you are to somewhere more resourced. Yield is the turn. You stop moving away from the experience and you turn towards it. This interrupts the resistance loop, the secondary threat signals your own bracing creates. It is the doorway. Nothing else is possible until this happens. Understand is the name. You give the experience precisely which state, what sensation, what quality. This moves the processing from the reactive amygdala to the observing prefrontal cortex. Once you know where you are, you can choose where to go. Seek is the question. What does this state need? Not what you habitually reach for. What does this moment in this body actually need? This is where generic advice fails and personal knowledge begins. Regulate is the response. Having turned towards, named, and identified, you act. Breath, movement, co regulation, not to fix the situation, but to support the nervous system through it. Turn, name, ask, respond. That's it. That's the whole method underneath the four letters. Here's what I want you to sit with. This pattern doesn't care what the difficulty is. We applied it to the loss of co-regulator in Heartbreak, turning towards grief instead of fighting it, naming protest versus despair, seeking new anchors, regulating through accumulating small returns. We applied it to the loss of a neuroceptive map in expat life, turning towards the honest experience of displacement, naming hypervigilance or shutdown or cultural grief, seeking sensory anchors, building a map through repetition. We applied it to the body that feels like an enemy in trying to conceive, turning towards the body rather than against it, naming the cyclic states of hope and grief, seeking support without instrumentalizing the practice, regulating as self care regardless of the outcome. We applied it to dissolution of identity in matrescence, turning towards the becoming rather than resisting it, naming hypervigilance, identity grief, and invisible labor, seeking witnessing and completion, regulating the self that is being built rather than trying to return to the self that was. For completely different situations, same for moves. Because the nervous system doesn't care whether the difficulty came from a divorce or a relocation or a difficult Tuesday morning. The response is the response, and the way through it is the same. The first time you try to yield in the middle of a real activation, it probably won't work well. You'll notice the resistance. Try to turn towards the feeling and immediately get swept back. That's normal. What changes with practice isn't that activation stops happening. It's that the sequence becomes more available more quickly with less effort. In the beginning, YUSR is something you do deliberately, often after activation has already peaked. A recovery tool. With practice, it becomes something you can access earlier. And eventually, the four moves start happening almost automatically, not as a conscious sequence, but as a way your nervous system learns to meet difficulty. That is what researchers mean when they talk about widening the window of tolerance. You are not becoming a person who doesn't get activated. You're becoming a nervous system that knows more reliably how to come back. That takes repetition, not perfection, repetition. Now, the thing I've been holding back, YUSR, the word, the name of this method, is not only an acronym. In Arabic, YUSR means ease, relief, the absence of constriction, the opposite of hardship. The Arabic root comes from the word usr, which means difficulty, tightness, the experience of being bound or constricted. And yusr is its direct antonym: ease arising, constriction releasing, the breath returning. The word appears in the Quran with one of its repeating lines in the text: for indeed with hardship comes ease. And it is said twice consecutively. The repetition is itself a teaching that ease doesn't come after hardship, it comes with it. Within it, the two exist simultaneously: the difficulty and the capacity to move through it, present in the same moment. When I built this method, I was drawn to this word for exactly that reason. Not because the method is drawn from Arabic tradition, it isn't, but because the word itself describes with precision what every step of the method is oriented towards. Yield is the ease with what is here rather than war with it. Understand is ease with uncertainty, the particular relief of naming something that was previously formless. Seek is the ease with need, the relief of reaching towards what the body actually requires rather than reaching for habit. Regulate is ease returning, the felt sense of the nervous system coming back to something livable. Yusr, ease, not as a destination you reach once the difficulty is over, as something that becomes available within the difficulty. Once you stop fighting it long enough to meet it. I found this profoundly moving, that a word from one ancient tradition maps so precisely onto the framework I built from nervous system science and yoga practice. Not because they are the same tradition, they aren't, but because they are pointing from different directions at the same human truth: that ease is not the absence of difficulty, it is what becomes possible when difficulty is met honestly. I want to tell you what's coming next. YUSR is a method built from nervous system science. It works. The science behind every step is real, and the practices genuinely change how your nervous system responds over time. And alongside it, there is a tradition of philosophical inquiry that has been mapping the same territory of human experience for over 2000 years. Described with remarkable precision in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, written somewhere between 1700 to 2000 years ago, and what I understand of them through the commentary of Harihar Anand Aranya, one of the most rigorous and clear voices of this ancient text. Starting next week, we begin exploring this tradition together. Two systems, independent of each other, mutually supportive, both in the service of the same woman, same life, same intention: to meet difficulty with honesty and to move towards ease. This is Yusri Yoga, a way of life. Before we close, the four questions, the most portable version of this method. the thing you can carry anywhere. When something difficult happens, anything, big or small, ask yourself, what is here? That's yield. Not what should be here, but what is. What is this? That's understand. Name it. State, sensation, quality. What does this need? That's seek. Not your habit. This moment actually need. What's the one thing I can do now? That's regulate. Not everything. One thing towards what you just identified. What's here? What's this? What does this need? What's one thing I can do now? 4 questions. You can ask them in under a minute. Anywhere. In a car, in a queue, in a bathroom, in bed at 3 a.m. And every time you ask them, even imperfectly, even if you can't act on the answer right now, you are practicing ease. You are practicing yusr. You are choosing in the smallest possible way to move towards ease rather than stay in resistance. 10 weeks ago, I told you that this method came from working with women who are in the middle of something enormous. Women whose bodies carry what their mind is only beginning to process. If that's been you, through any of what we've covered, or through something else entirely that you're holding right now, I want you to know that what you've built over these 10 weeks is real. Not just information, a practice, a pathway, a way of meeting yourself you didn't have before. You are learning to turn towards instead of away, to name with precision, to ask what you actually need instead of reaching out of mere habit, and to respond not perfectly, not permanently, but consistently enough to begin to change what your nervous system expects. That is not a small thing. That is the work, and you have been doing it. Yusr, ease, with what is towards what's possible. Next Wednesday, we begin with yoga philosophy. I can't wait to show you what's there. I'll see you Wednesday.